did some chores around the house. Still in the process of unpacking a bunch of stuff. So there's still boxes around our house. It's been pretty quiet so far. Jaheen? Hello. I don't think I'll ever be rid of boxes. I think they'll just be... Hey, Spider Boy! I'm glad you're here too. Hey Jason, hey Sullivan. Hey Santana. Hey hello. Jason, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome. I'm glad you can make it if it's your first time. But also welcome back to everyone who was either here yesterday or here before. It's gonna be, we're going from 1 to 4, so it's not like too much shorter than my average stream time, but Wednesdays are definitely a little bit different. Yeah. Oh, I played Splatoon for the first time last night. I'm very bad at the game, but it is fun. It was really funny because there was a point in the tutorial where I like didn't know what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to actually go because the maps confuse me sometimes. And it was trying to teach me how to use the zip lines as where you like go into like squid form, or I guess the octopus version of the squid form. And I didn't know like where I was supposed to go, so I was like, Gary, I'm lost, and he's like, this game is for kids. This game is for children. And I'm like, okay, sure, I'm still lost. And he had to sort of be like, you go over here, and I'm like, oh, okay. So glad to know I'm struggling with a game that's meant for children, but it's fine. Got absolutely demolished trying to play. Well, no, we actually did okay when we were trying to play Salmon Run. We got absolutely demolished trying to play like the normal games. So many people have so many good like weapons, and I was playing mostly with like the starter one. They're also just like, their reflexes were so good. Oh my god, there's so many Japanese players on at the time that we were playing, so it was just like we were getting just absolutely destroyed. It was very cool. It was very fun. And I'm very excited to play more of it. It's nice how the game, even though like it is kind of difficult to win when you're like a lower level, the games are fast enough whereas like I'm not really that bothered. Hey Cherry! Where'd you get the name RiaCatt from? So it is a very typoed version of a name that I actually wanted originally, which was Araceli, which is an actual name. But it was not available on DeviantArt. So then I poorly typoed the name until I got Araceli, which was a lot easier to nickname for people, because then they could just call me Aru instead of Ara. If I went with the original one. But yeah, it was not the name that I originally wanted, but is the name that I have now. And I seem to have like a spectacular sense for creating usernames that cannot be pronounced whatsoever. So people will still call me Araceli, which I find funny and understandable, even because like it is predominantly my misunderstanding of what like Celli is normally pronounced like, but Araceli, yeah. they call me a pasta. It is, yeah, it's not the intention, but I can't blame anyone for calling me that. Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, our Wi-Fi connection, it wasn't necessarily that it dropped, but it does struggle with Splatoon a little bit, so I can only imagine playing it in dorm is just not possible. I'm glad people are enjoying the more regular streams. Unfortunately, we can't keep it up for too long, but always very appreciative that people drop by and come around. It's very nice. Thank you. Prodigy. Hey, Roomlight. It's been a while. Hope you're doing well. One day I'll stream at a time that is good for you. Thoughts on the character design of Dark Souls, different take on medieval. Yeah, I think they're fine. They're cool. I feel like Dark Souls or any of the FromSoft games, design-wise, they always look much better when they're modeled than they do in concept. I think they have a really stellar art team over there that really knows how to translate kind of more abstract ideas into like tangible 3D models in the games. So I think they're fantastic. It's like a really cool interpretation of classic Gothic, just like ideas of what it means to do something that is softly medieval, softly Gothic, kind of cosmic horror in a way, you know, with Bloodborne. It's good. I think it's always exciting to see, you know, in a company from Asia and their take on Western design and sensibilities. I think that's really interesting to see because oftentimes you'll see Western interpretations of Asia more so than the other way around. And what they've chosen to be faithful with and what they've chosen to kind of merge across eras and across time periods is really interesting. Pet Peach! Miss Peach! Do you have any little pet? She is on the floor of my office today. I mean, I use Pinterest kind of as a way to look at a variety of resources all at once. It's a little bit difficult because there's not really like a repository for clothing and costume. I guess it depends on like if you want historical costume references or if you want like just clothing references. I don't know what that would be. Really. I think unless you know what you want precisely and then you can like Google for resources. Otherwise, like the reason why Pinterest works is because you don't need to know exactly what you want to be able to find a variety of search results. is because it was mainly because he has like a chest pendant. Everything else on him is relatively symmetrical, is just because the chest pendant had to be on his right side. Sai, unlike Photoshop, Sai does not permanently flip the canvas. They do have a view flip, so I don't actually have to worry about the actual canvas orientation being wrong. I just had to remember that his chest pendant was on the right side. Paint over the line art? Not for this one. None of the charity commissions get colored unless it's a headshot or a chibi. Apparently I use a Cintiq. your thoughts on pirated course contents? I don't really have any thoughts on it. I was notified by Class 101 that I think my course got leaked, which I thought was kind of funny. There were some pretty nasty comments on it though, which I also thought was interesting. I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts on it. have any dream jobs or projects that you would want to work on? Not particularly. I think technically I already did work for the place that I would have responded to this question with, which is Wizards of the Coast, but I've already done that. So I don't know, I kind of don't have like dream projects or places that I'd love to work at. Like, I've never been the kind of person to like really want to work somewhere or with people or with certain people or like on something. I've never idolized something that much to think that working on it is what I'd want to do. I think I'm happy enough knowing that it exists separate from like me being a part of it. So I think I'd just much rather do my own stuff. Do you have any advice for the cleanup stage? I feel like I can make something that looks okay from a distance, but zooming in feels like I'm not adding much or making it worse. Getting through the cleanup stage. You know, I've always struggled with like the cleanup part as well. It's kind of hard to know when something is done and when something is like not yet there. And then in the attempt of trying to figure out when it gets there or waiting for the moment where you're like, okay, now it's finally done, you realize that you've kind of like overdone it or did too much but in not the right places. I think the way that I think I've approached it in the past is I will try to like not jump into doing anything too drastic. I'll try to take it slow and just say like, okay, I'm gonna add a little bit here and a little bit there, and I'm gonna try to focus on like what is the most important part of like what's the focal point, what are you meant to be looking at. Usually it's the face, because that's typically what people want to look at when they're looking at a character. and I'll try to like bit by bit crawl towards something that I feel like is decent enough. And in the course of that, I'll start to learn like, okay, maybe I spent too much time here. Maybe this is actually like not helping, it's actually detracting from the piece. And just basically trying out cleaning up certain places in certain ways and then realizing like, okay, I think that worked out, or no, I don't think that actually helped at all. And always doing it so that you're not like committing to the decision that you made. You're kind of like, I'll do things where like I'll duplicate the file or I'll duplicate the layer and I'll just be like, I'm just gonna try this and see if it like helps. I'll zoom in, zoom out, take a look at the whole piece, see if it helps. But I think it's when you like tunnel vision into trying to like just sort of overall finish without actually considering the whole piece, and then you zoom out and you're like, why did I do that? It's like it didn't end up looking better or anything. It's usually when you get into those like autopilot, just, you know, kind of try to finish it by adding more detail or taking certain things away, and then you realize like, oh, I spent like an hour doing that and it doesn't look better and it actually looks worse. Just requires a lot of like back and forth, and you never really know for each piece whether or not you're making the right decisions. You can kind of only hope that as you're committing to something, you can kind of, you know, keep checking it overall, keep looking at it from a distance, and making sure that even though it's not like, you know, even if you think it looks okay from far away, if that's the case, then like what you're adding shouldn't take away from what you think is already working. And the only way you're gonna get to that point is to develop that kind of gut instinct for, I think this is too much, or I think I'm, you know, noodling a little bit too much in this place and it's not actually helping. Understanding your habits, right? I know that I tend to get really in the weeds with drawing like fabric, but I'm not focusing nearly enough on like the outside kind of silhouette of the fabric. And then it just ends up looking like overly detailed and not very interesting. So whenever I draw fabric, I try to look at it more from like a general point of view, and then I choose very specific places where I'm like, okay, I need to focus on putting in less folds to describe more, because I know that that's my habit. So once you learn your own habits and you learn like what are the things that you do that you think don't work, the easier it is for you to then start making choices that are like more grounded in terms of, I know this in the past has turned out really well when I choose to do this proportion of detail to big shape to big area to, you know, or choosing where to put detail. Is something you just kind of learn with experience and learn what works and what doesn't. So I'd say just take it slower. Really try to kind of approach it piece by piece and say, this area looks pretty empty. I wonder if I can add like, you know, a medium shape here, right? Because like sometimes when you have a character, or I'm gonna say character just for the sake of, you know, that's what I do. When you have a character that has a lot of big open spaces on them, right? The way to solve a boring shape or a thing that you think needs more detail is not to actually add small details, but to add maybe one medium shape that cuts through it. That way, you know, you're not crowding this large space with like tiny things that are like distracting, but you're kind of allowing it to break up this larger space, so that, you know, when you're looking at it overall, it doesn't detract from the fact that you have like an overall well balance of shapes. It just makes certain areas slightly less large and slightly less expansive and simple. And then it's a lot easier to then place small details in very specific areas that are purposeful, that you meant to put there. And it gives you like less of this like open canvas to work with, so that when you're trying to determine like, oh, what's a good place to start adding and cleaning up detail and putting in like, you know, smaller kind of more focused time towards really embellishing something, then, you know, you're not totally overwhelmed by like, oh, there's so much here that I have to fix, so much here that I have to like clean up. So breaking it down is, in my experience, what I've done to try to like approach that, because I've also had a lot of really weird struggles with like that kind of stage of, okay, here's all my ideas and here's the sketch, and trying to like figure out how to like make this clear and concise and readable, and it usually doesn't last. Hey Bruno! Hey Ungato! Will I be doing more personal concept art after finishing the charity commissions? That is my goal, yes. I do hope to do more kind of personal stuff afterwards. Hey, listen. I don't like networking. Never have. I have a really hard time talking to someone or having a conversation with someone where I know the whole point of the encounter is that one person wants something that the other person has. So I personally don't even try to approach things like networking. The most I'll do is like, you know, I'll say, like, when I was at Lightbox, I kind of just went to people that I knew who were tabling, but I was like, I said hi to them, I was asking them like, you know, what have you been up to, like, what's happening? And then like occasionally I'll go to people's tables and I'll be like, yeah, I love your stuff, and I'll like buy stuff from them, and like I can ask them a question or two, but like I'm really not the person to ask about networking or even talking to people, because I explicitly at Lightbox was very uncomfortable with the idea of like starting a conversation with someone with the intent of like, oh, you know, I hope you remember that I talked to you. The one time I did that was absolutely disastrous. And I hope I never see that artist again, frankly, because I hope they don't remember that I even talked to them. It was, I don't know, I can't do it. And like, people make networking work and that's so cool for them, love that. I just don't, I can't talk to someone again knowing that that's like the exchange. So I don't know, networking is absolutely not for me. I'd say at least my kind of like strategy at Lightbox just to like survive was I went to a lot more talks, and if the talks let you like ask questions and stuff, I'd say that was a lot easier for me to kind of like bridge that space, especially if it wasn't like a super populated talk. I went to a lot more talks than I did like standing outside in Artist Alley. But again, I'm not really the person to talk about networking with. I dislike the idea. Yeah, Dojo would understand that more than I do, or would have more helpful advice than me, because he actually studied communications. And I would rather just meet people through work. Should I have more of a realistic art style or stick with my slightly more stylized one? It depends on what kind of work you want to do, right? Like, here's the thing. There is a niche for pretty much every style out there. The only thing is, are you willing to accept that at certain points you will be unable to take or unable to qualify for certain jobs because of your skill set? The reason why people say generalists, this is kind of not answering a question. The reason why people say generalists are much better to be than specialists is because the idea that it opens up your job pool. But if you're a specialist, you have to understand that inherently you do close off a part of your pool because you choose to do something very specific. If you choose to do a stylized style, it's not like you won't get any jobs. It's just that you have to accept that there are certain jobs that are going to be unavailable to you. And if that's your preference because you much rather prefer to work in a style you're comfortable with, then that's fine. You're still going to be able to have like job opportunities or job offers or even just the potential to qualify. It's just that if you choose realistic art style, like, yeah, there are jobs for that, but it's not like there aren't jobs for your normal style. Concept is not really all that consistent when it comes to style expectations. I think a lot of quote-unquote concept artists that you see are probably from an era where a lot of games are trying to prove that they can be hyper-realistic, that they can push tech. And now that we've done it, a lot of games have kind of bounced back to be a lot more stylized because that's just the nature of things. Like when something takes over in terms of being the zeitgeist, and then the next era it bounces back to something like the polar opposite. We saw a lot of indie games in the past couple years, more stylized games, and then now more recently a lot of games are trying to push again for that kind of level of realism, that level of kind of high fidelity, but there's a mix, right? So I don't think you have to switch your style to get into or to qualify. It's more so, what kind of work do you want to be doing and what kind of style is that work expected to be? If you want to go into film or want to go into those more high fidelity games, then yeah, you're probably going to have to learn some level of like realism. But if you don't want to go into those games, then you don't have to take on a realistic style. It all depends on what you want to do or what projects you want to work on or what industry you want to work in. And you just have to accept that ultimately those decisions or that decision is just going to put more of a focus on what jobs are available to you. I think it's more so that, okay, wait, I'm about to say something out of pocket because I'm not as much of a games analyst as my partner is. But from my understanding, roguelikes is not a very popular, like, genre for, like, the companies that are pushing out more realistic games, right? There have been roguelikes that exist that have been made by like the companies that would reach for the high fidelity, but it's not the best genre to kind of communicate that. And I think companies that push for high fidelity stuff, generally they're going to spend their money on genres that would do much better, just by numbers, by monetary financial like return. So roguelikes are not a genre that return in the way that they would dedicate or like invest in. And so roguelikes tend to be made by people or companies that tend to be stylized, so it's less so that the genre itself is trending towards stylization. I just think that the genre is much more populated by studios willing to make a game in the genre, who already happen to be stylized, because stylization is not often cheaper, but just a lot more approachable for people that don't have the tech or the hardware to render a game or to program a game that has like the infrastructure to support high fidelity. And I mean, you know, we're in kind of an era where quite a few of the most popular trend-setting games are made by studios with not the budget of like a AAA, but still don't really count as indie. So there's a lot of like potential for stylization to be just as viable financially. It just so happens that a lot of the bigger companies out there just don't. They're not going to necessarily invest in projects that they don't see as having like a high return or higher return. This guy doesn't have a full body. Okay. I mean, just because it can be low cost doesn't mean that they are. Even games that quote unquote are low cost are still millions, or still cost millions. Any game can be as expensive as you want it to be, and MiHoYo does not pull punches when it comes to their games. So I'm unsurprised that Zenless Zone Zero is going to be, you know, a game of its type, just because I think they. Well, I mean, their games have always had like an element of roguelike-ness, just from the aspect of like most of their games having been, or not really Genshin, but Honkai kind of had semi roguelike tendencies in some of their game modes. So I wonder if it was always kind of in their interest, but I'm unsurprised, just because I'm sure it's because of the success of games like Hades that they even considered it in the first place. Hey, Blue Pig. Supergiant's an interesting case. I mean, their games have always kind of been relatively successful. Obviously not to the degree of Hades. But it is interesting how they stay afloat as such a tiny company. Which I mean, it was still in the millions. I know that they are very stingy about hiring people because obviously every new person is like a studio of that size is still at like a half a year salary is still like not a quarter, like per year running the cost of a studio like that is still probably closer to almost a million. But I know that they're very stingy about filling roles. Like they're kind of a fend for yourself sort of a studio from what I understand. Like they don't have producers or anything like that. Everyone manages themselves. They're like the head of their own department, which is a crazy amount of work. To also then be the sole developer with that. Like they had one 3D artist, one 3D animator, one VFX artist, one, like it's insane how much they've created like this compact skeleton crew, and as soon as they lose one person, like that's an entire department decimated. And they don't even have, like, again, they don't have producers, which is like something that a lot of companies use to keep like games on track. So I mean it's commendable, but it's also like, you know, people, it's not like it is a balancing on a thin thread of peace. A studio director is sort of like not the same as a producer for each department. Or an executive producer, rather. games do you like to play? I haven't played any games recently except for Splatoon, so I can't say Splatoon is necessarily the game I'd like to play. I don't know, it's hard to say. I guess like single player type games is generally more my speed. But I don't really like genres, more so I just like very certain games. So I don't know, it's hard to say. But from my, I guess, repertoire, single player games, RPGs, types, regardless of like the genre, is usually what I tend to play. And then I have one MMO that I play occasionally whenever I'm in the mood. Other than that, I don't really play that many games. I am excited. I've so far been able to kind of not hear anything about it. I got spoiled for a few things, but not everything, and I haven't watched the trailers, so only a few more months until I can finally play it. I will hydrate in a second. Okay. So that's done. What do we have next? Okay, move that up. This person said, don't know about weapons? There isn't a weapon attached to this. I'm just going to assume none. Trends on VizDev portfolios have become overused. Well, again, I'm not a visual development artist, so I can't really speak specifically to VizDev, but gosh, thank you for the raid. Thank you so much. I guess it's hard to say. I haven't really looked at student portfolios in a while. I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of students tend to like do a version of a pre-existing story, which is not a bad idea. It's just like it is something that every student does. So I have to wonder if like, is it really that bad to just come up with your own? Because clearly, you know, the benefit of doing a pre-existing story is that you don't have to explain to someone what the story is. If you do an original project, you kind of have to explain it, and then that can get kind of busy and overwhelming. So there's, you know, always the wonder of like, should you have done something original or just stuck with what everyone else has done. But I do think it's interesting just how many student portfolios are all just based on like you know, folk tales or myths or like, you know, Disney movies or whatever. It's just very interesting. I don't know, portfolios, the tropes that exist are because they've sort of been passed down from successful portfolio to successful portfolio. Not to say that they will automatically make you successful, but more so that they just kind of have stuck around as techniques that teachers have taught and students have suggested to each other. So stuff like, you know, doing silhouettes. Silhouettes seem to be something that is in every portfolio, even though I'm not really sure if silhouettes are like all that useful to certain artists. I think certain artists are meant to use silhouettes and they use them well, and some artists just don't really know how to like maximize their use. Like I'm one of those people that just can't do silhouettes and do them well. But even I put silhouettes in my portfolio because I was like, oh, but you're supposed to, because silhouettes are part of the process. It's like, they don't have to be if they're not like something that helps you. Some students, something I generally don't recommend to put in any portfolio is like a lot of text. Like if you're someone who feels like you know, you have to describe like this character's story and stuff, you really don't. You kind of just need to tell them like basic information about like their personality and their like a one line to describe like their role in the story or even like what they're trying to do. Because like the person who's looking at your portfolio isn't there to like get a bead on your world building or anything like that. But a lot of people that, I guess this is more of a crime of the personal projects, but even people that do like their own interpretation of something, they'll still put in like, oh, here's how my story's different from like the original. You really don't have to describe that much about the story. Ideally, the less you describe and the more interesting the pieces are, the more successful ultimately that project is, because you invite people to ask questions about like, you know, oh, what is this interpretation of this story about? Sorry, I keep yawning for some reason. What is this like interpretation of like this folk tale or this mythology do that's different? Should be very obvious in the design that you've put in the pieces that you've included, and you shouldn't have to explain it to anyone, or rather you shouldn't feel like you have to in order for them to get it. can't really think of anything else. I will say, like, what you do in a student portfolio has absolutely nothing to do with what you do for a professional portfolio, right? Like, the stuff that you would put into a student one, generally all those things you probably won't keep when you start applying elsewhere. So you don't have to worry about trying to be too different when it comes to a student portfolio, but it is good to try and innovate where you can, whether that be trying to find like new ways to organize the information on your pages so that it, like, all of it feels a lot more cohesive. You're not just following like a template. If you see like a certain aesthetic or style that's very common in portfolios, maybe look into doing like a story that's kind of different or not super common. Like, so many people have done Dune. So many people have done like the Disney movie fairy tales. So many people have done their take on the Arthurian legends. So many people have done their take on like, you know, not really, like Lord of the Rings, high fantasy stuff gets done sometimes. They'll do sci-fi stuff a lot, like going into kind of not cyberpunk, but just like futuristic sci-fi stuff. Unless you do a slightly different story or a slightly different aesthetic, they've seen like tons of the kind of like slightly mechy streetwear look. And so you really should just try to do your research about you know, what are the trends that they've seen recently? What do you think people will be sending in? And try and find something that's slightly different, that's slightly unique and feels a lot more like you, and try to do a project that matches that. I mean, if you like that stuff, that's fine, but find a new way to interpret medieval. Find a new way to interpret high fantasy, right? If your stuff looks like it could come straight out of Lord of the Rings, then you're only a derivative of the costume design and the graphic design of what their interpretation of elves and dwarves and all that kind of stuff should be. Like, who said that you know, elves should be very like Art Deco based and I'm sorry, Art Nouveau based, and like, you know, why should they like look or feel or even like wear these certain things? Why are dwarves so much based on Art Deco, and why is like everything so straight and angled and stuff? Like, there's so many other things that you could have done for them, that if you like that kind of stuff and you want to make a project like that, then you can. You just kind of have to take on the responsibility of choosing, like, hey, if I want to make this project stand out, I have to come up with a bunch of different interpretations of these things and try to find a way to innovate in a way that not a ton of people try to do. They see high fantasy and they're like, oh yeah, like, I'll just do what, like, you know, I'll just do flowery, very symbolically nature type-esque designs, and I'll do like flowy robes and you know, all that kind of stuff, and goblins are green and orcs are, you know, like massive hulking, just like they just look like the orcs in like World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings or whatever. And there's like no innovation on like, what does it, like, you know, you have a bunch of these mob creatures, but are they sentient? Do they have their own culture, right? Are they more than just these like hyper violent, aggressive races, or is there more context that you can give them that fleshes them out in a way that none of these fantasy books have tried? would say that's probably also another thing too, like people that just kind of switch the culture but don't switch like the context for something. Like they will just put like, oh, here is Snow White but in cyberpunk Japan, you know, like it's not really like a reinterpretation of the genre or the aesthetic. It is simply just picking something up and dropping it in a different pot and then hoping that it works out. Is like, you know, it's like you can do that, it's just not the most useful thing when you're a you know, not recruiter, sorry. What is it? Like, what are they called? Not acceptance. What are they called? The people that review portfolios. I don't remember what they're called, but you know, that whole team. All of those things, like, they see that so often every single year, every single semester. So you kind of just have to consider, like, how do you make this project unique and different, and exciting for someone who's never seen that kind of stuff before. I guess they kind of are. But yes, also thank you, Tojo. Favorite project that you've worked on? The project that recently got announced, I suppose. I contracted for Wizards of the Coast. And that was a very fun project. I enjoyed it. They're the people that make D&D and Magic the Gathering. What topic would you suggest someone to start improving their visual library? What topics? You can start with basic stuff like poses, and like just, you know, simple clothing. I don't think you really have to like do anything too drastic if you're just starting out, just because you know, all that kind of stuff, if you become interested in historical fashion and whatnot, like you'll get the personal kind of drive to start learning more about it. But when you're just starting out, like just even learning about different ways, different types of clothing, right? You know, the names for different types of fabrics that you can learn through just even observing modern fashion. Poses, different types, reclining, fighting, standing, moving, running. Those are good ways just to start if you're interested in characters, and then you can slowly kind of build out from there. Who do you think would get a job first? Someone with an unoriginal portfolio with great technical skills, or someone with very original ideas but average technical skill? Depends on what the company or person hiring them would prioritize. Some people are not able to see ideas past skill, so that's why I stress that sometimes how you draw a design is just as important as the design itself. Because there are quite a few people, oftentimes the people not the part of the creative team, that will not be able to see past the better drawing. But there are people that will value good ideas over like technical skill, because maybe you're not someone who's going to be doing a lot of the finished marketing pieces or forward public facing pieces. But again, like that's dependent on like who's judging your work and who's hiring you. And you have to accept that both types of people that can see past skill and people that can't, are going to be the people, like those are all in the pool together, and you never know. So, you know, that's why I tell people you have to be very cognizant of the fact that how you draw an idea will impact some people's ability to see whether or not it's worth doing, if it has potential. And even if it does, they might go with the person who can draw better, because it's a lot easier to have someone who maybe they can just put them on the jobs that require more like forward facing kind of like nice key art that you can put in the art book or put on a marketing illustration, because some places just don't prioritize good ideas over experts and in their craft. You can't really be certain. What do you think is a good way to manage studies and personal projects? Which do you think is more valuable to do? Well, one answer I have for that is, why do they have to be separate, right? Why can't you integrate both your studies and your personal projects to be the same thing at the same time? But second answer to that question, I think you should try to switch off of them whenever you feel like you need that kind of extra energy for your studies, when you feel like you're losing kind of power or passion. Personal projects are a great way to bring that back into the equation. And if you're someone that, you know, finds yourself struggling to get through or empower through like moments where you're trying to learn something, you know, I think getting back into personal projects is a great way to remind yourself why you're working towards whatever you're working towards. But then, you know, doing studies and stuff is it's again, hopefully always towards like an intended goal or an intended like result that you want to then kind of take over to the times that you are working on your personal stuff. So, you know, switch off between the two to try and find like how much time do you need to spend on personal projects to have the energy to go through like a period of doing studies and learning and all that kind of stuff. Personally for me though, I think it's kind of it is supremely boring to do studies. So I tend to try to merge the two whenever I can, as opposed to saying like, this is study time and this is personal time. But you know, I think everyone's kind of meter for how long they can go between doing stuff or doing personal stuff. Because my meter is not that long before I start feeling kind of like the burnout of, hey, I've just been doing work that I don't really care about for a while. This sucks. But yeah. Oh, no wonder my room's hot. My fan's not on. I think Peach is sitting behind my table specifically so I can't reach her, which is very funny. Hey. She wasn't even connected to the right device. My little chibi has been silent this whole time. I am making this pose up as I go. You can use whatever digital program you want. It does not need you to use Photoshop if you don't have it. What would you say has always been your strong suit or something that came easy to you in art? I've always enjoyed drawing hands. I think even when I wasn't particularly good at them, I'd always enjoyed them. So I never really understood whenever people were like, I draw hands by putting them behind the back or something like that, you know? Like, oh, put it in pockets or put it behind their back or, you know, don't show the hands. I've always really liked hands. Sorbail, thank you for the tier 1 sub for 23 months. Thank you so much. bed. This should not be on this side. We'll do the full body first. Okay. which position? Okay. Get up and stretch. What did I have for breakfast today? I didn't have breakfast. I just had a sandwich for lunch. I'm gonna pick Peach. This Peach is right here. How do you practice going straight to line without underdrawing or mannequins? It's not so much that I practice to go straight to drawing with line work, it's that using guidelines has become a little bit pointless when I have been practicing drawing humans and stuff for quite a while, and it's gotten to the point where I can guess where everything is supposed to go, even with like the question of posing, with the question of like how do the clothes fall, and it's all because like I've gotten very comfortable drawing it. So the analogy I always use is that like, you know, when you were starting to learn your language, right, they gave you like a little guide on how to write the letters, each letter, and you eventually learned how to draw the letters, and then you learned that the letters had meaning, that they could be put together to form words, and then words can be put together to form sentences, and then you went on and on until at a certain point you were able to describe complex abstract ideas with complex sentences. You can be creative about it, but at the same time, like at that point, did you need to do you still need the guide to draw the letters at that point? Right, so that's kind of the idea, is like, at a certain point, drawing the guide just kind of became something I did to, help me draw something that I already kind of understood how to draw without it. I still use guides for, you know, sketches and stuff for things that I'm not comfortable with. But when it comes to characters, I've been drawing them for so long that at this point, it is just much faster, much simpler, and a lot more fun to draw without guidelines. Doesn't mean that I get them right all the time, but this is just far more enjoyable to do when I'm drawing. Well, hydrate. Hi, Celine. I did make the character in the bottom right. Unfortunately, commissions are not open right now, and I also don't do anything as, like, I guess, elaborate as what I have for my little stream chibi. thinking the thing you're saying is like Wobbuffet saying his name every time anyone says anything to him. I think I hear it in his voice too. You know, variables. Hi, Peach. Thank you for coming. Was about time. Also doing well. There might take a while. you. I hope you have a fantastic day as well. I particularly like Central Asian, kind of like folk, nomadic, kind of like culture and costume. I'm also a pretty big fan of like turn of the century, Europe, kind of specifically like turn of the century, Britain kind of era is also very nice. Do I have any experience in Procreate? I do. I'm not a big fan of it, but I do have experience with it. I don't know. What color do you think I vibe with more? I'd say probably, like, if I were to say a color, I like red just because it's like my favorite color, I think. I do like certain shades of pink, and then there's like, well, you know, then I'm just gonna start saying every color. Like, I love yellow ochre as a color. I love like wine reds. That's like my favorite type of red. Uh, Pink is kind of like a soft thing. I'm not sure if I'm like super into like most shades of pink, but there are certain shades, and then like kind of like the sage green, spring green type of thing. I have favorite colors. I just don't know which one I use more often than the others. If that makes any sense. That is the color that I like. This kind of almost CMYK sort of color scheme is sort of one that defined me for a little bit. I've definitely gotten a lot more like natural tone in my life in general. Um, so not as big of a CMYK person anymore. But I do still like it. like fall colors quite a bit. I feel like I'm kind of in the transitionary period between like, I'm not totally a fall toned person, but I am definitely a lot more of a natural colored kind of like palette. Feeling more in that line lately than before, because like before I used to just like wear like all black. That was like the thing. Or really like dark colors, like dark blue, dark red. But nowadays I've been wearing like kind of like more natural linen tones or like soft greens and stuff. So definitely in a new era of my life. Hey, Kimmy. We've been doing a new stream schedule basically for September. But this is the last week of us doing 3 streams a week, and we're going back to just Friday next week. Have I been self-caring? I think so. Although I haven't really done anything different than just like, I sleep more often now. I work on 11 by 17 inches at 300 dpi. I said 300 DPI. I don't really go above 300. It's not really necessary. Hey, Chrissy. I mean, yeah, it's probably indistinguishable from 300. The jump from 300 to 600 is also barely noticeable for the most part. It just makes your document size like a lot bigger. But functionally not really useful. Oh, she's not. Hey, Silver Soul. I think that's probably it for this one as well. And this one also, I think, has a chibi, but we'll do that next time. Once this one's done, we only have 9 left. It's crazy. Oh, we're almost done. The charity commissions, I can't believe it. This month, we got a lot done this month, thank God. Just a couple more streams, yeah. But yes, since it's basically 4, I will probably end it here. Where did we start? I think we started, like, let's see. Go all the way back to the bottom. December, let's go to January 4th, December 30th. We had, like, I think almost 200. Oh wait, no. We had like 100. No, it wasn't 200. It was like 124, 120. It was a lot. But we have gotten it down to 9. We're almost 9. We're at 10 right now. I need to do a chibi next time, and then we'll be fine. But yeah, so it's 4. I'm probably going to end stream here so I could get some chores done before I got stuff to do later. But thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for hanging out, coming by. If you ask questions, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to die in D&D today. We'll see. I don't want Kaisa to die. But yeah, thank you so much for coming by. We will be streaming again on Friday at 7, so that will be normal time, and the next week we'll be back to just streaming on Fridays. So, thank you everyone for, if you've been by during like the Monday and Wednesday streams, thank you for coming, and thank you for making this really fun. I will see you all on Friday. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you all later.